Welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. So this is at around 9 p.m. I've set it actually at 10 past 9 on YouTube because I am a little bit late usually because there's an excellent TV program I have to watch. So yeah, it's usually 10 past 9 technically. So anyway, this week was a dramatic week for the world of chess. We saw the world chess candidates create a candidate. Welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. Take out the echo. I thought I'd try a maple board. By the way, how is the board on YouTube? This board design, if you ever use ChessBase, you can change your board style, and I think this is the maple design on black. I thought it's quite interesting little change from the other one. I hope it's okay. All right, so yeah, so Sergei Karakin, or as I sometimes joked in the past on YouTube, I called him carjacking, which sounds like he's a carjacker. That was quite a funny, long-standing joke about him. But no, I changed when I said his name to Sergei Karakin, which I think is more like how it should be said. So he turned out to be the winner in the end with this fantastic game, which I'm sure everyone's seen by now, and I covered it on YouTube actually this morning on the YouTube channel. So so there was a fantastically tense final game between him and Caruana, and no, there have been some really great games, and I like in particular looking at the decisive games. So so I'm sorry for Giri fans, but I can't look at any of his games because all of his games, I mean every single Giri game was a draw, so we're not going to go over any Giri games tonight. I'm sorry if that comes as a big disappointment. There are some decisive games to look at which I haven't looked at yet. So one of them was Karakin in an earlier round against Topalov, and yeah, this was really dramatic. I think I was busy that day. I would have probably tried to cover it. It's a very exciting game. Let's cover it now. So this was on the 25th, 4 days ago. So Topalov has been the bottom of the cross table in this tournament and came bottom below. He was the only player actually below 50%, so he wasn't having a great time, and towards the end I think he wanted the tournament to just end. Who can blame him? Okay, so this is what happened when he met the eventual winner. So e4 from Sergei Karakin. Topalov played the Sicilian defense. We have knight f3, d6. Yeah, it was an open Sicilian, a very exciting open Sicilian defense. And for me, you know, this represents, the Sicilian defense represents to me what chess is all about. Fighting chess is all about: dynamic, aggressive. When I think of the Sicilian defense, I think of, you know, Kasparov and Fischer. And I think Kasparov's actual openings were influenced by Fischer anyway. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence there anyway. And also the King's Indian defense used to be my favourite for d4, but of course that's not popular nowadays. But the Sicilian defense remains hugely popular. And what variation in particular do we go into here? Well, we see actually the Najdorf, the a6, and this very trendy move h3. Let's actually put on a Kibitzer. Very, very trendy move. Oh, by the way, a special hello to Jessica Fisher Queen on YouTube. Hi Jessica. Jessica's helped my channel tremendously over the years. Helped me organise playlists, etc., and great support, and got me back on the 5-minute. By the way, I had become quite depressed playing 5-minute online, but I think it's because of Jessica. One of the main reasons I returned back to do 5-minute games, because the 3-minute ones were a bit like junk, and I knew they were junk anyway. I just too shallow. But anyway, aside from that, let's get back to this game. So hi Jessica on the stream. So h3. This is really getting popular, this move. Let's connect to live, but what does it say about h3? I mean, the most popular is still moves like bishop e3, bishop g5. Yeah, I mean, h3 is like, in recent years, this has been tried by a lot of super grandmasters, h3. So it's basically like saying, going to fidget to the bishop, going to put pressure on d5. g5 might be useful to undermine the knight's control of d5 as well. So it's all about this d5 battle. But Fischer has also played this back in the day, in the 70s, 60s. Maybe, you know, he can be regarded as an exponent as well. It's just a very, very logical idea, and less theoretically trodden than other ways of playing the position. And black's usual moves are either e6 or e5. Here, Topalov plays e6. So we see this move g4, and you might think, well, should black really be cautious here and play h6? That has been tried to stop g5. Even d5 here is interesting, actually. It's been played. In this game, we see knight fd7, and now bishop e3, bishop e3, bishop e7. And already an interest point for me when I quickly played through this game, I wondered what this was about. White plays g5 here immediately, and it looks as though, hold on a sec, isn't that pawn just like hanging? I think there's some tactical ideas lurking behind the scenes. I think I'm glimpsing one immediately myself now, to do with knight takes e6. But let's just 100% check that. So I'm gonna put on a Kibitzer. Pardon me, I've got Kibitzer on. If bishop takes g5, yeah, can you see what white can do? I might have given a clue just then. White's play here. This wasn't played. White's play here. So why do you think black is not taking this pawn on g5? What can white play in this position which actually gives white a significant edge? And okay, can you know why as well? Because sometimes, you know, you might guess a move but not know the full reason why. So ideally the move and also why, if you're going to say on stream, what happens here, why this is a poison pawn in this position. Any ideas? All right, on now Albert on Play Chess has mentioned queen h5, and you mentioned another move as well. Queen h5, not quite. Bishop takes here, and I don't think there's any time for this because we can just say take here, and this is just good for black apparently. So the key move is actually knight takes e6. So give yourself 100 points if you saw that after bishop takes g5, we've actually got knight takes e6 here, forking the queen and the bishop. So it's a very, very forcing move. And then after takes, then we have this check. So we're double attacking. And then this is an advantage for white because black's lost his dark square bishop, is slightly weaker on the dark squares. That's a nice edge for white there. Equal on pawns, right? 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's an edge for white. The bishop has a big edge here. All right, so this pawn wasn't taken. Instead, we see b5, a3, and that tactic still holds there about knight takes e6. Bishop b7, and we see h4, black castles, queen d2. And this takes me back, this reminds me, I once had this crushing game against Murugan at Lloyd's Bet Masters. So it was our English attack system against a shaven Ingen, and I played like this, playing for like h5 and g6. And he was like 24-20 at the time. It was one of my scalps that year at Lloyd's Bet Masters. And it's, so I remember, I have fond memories of this type of attack, you know, h5 and g6. It's dangerous because you're trying to open up the h file. But also, if the pawns are like this, there's some interesting resource possibilities. Like if you have a bishop on d4 later, then you've got rook h8. So there's a lot of interest points to opening up the h file with h5 and g6 as a plan. A lot of tactical resources can be introduced. Okay, so here we see knight b6, and in fact this plan is ruthlessly pursued here, even without castling queenside. White is going quickly for this h5 and g6. He plays h5. We see knight 8 to d7, and now g6. It's ruthless, and it's also, of course, undermining e6. There's been someone mentioned somewhere that There's been a similar game. One of Kasparov's last games in his career was against British Grandmaster Michael Adams, and it was a bit like in this system, and Kasparov had played something like Bishop f6 at some point, but it's probably not this position, probably not this exact position, although Bishop f6 might be a candidate move. You see, in that game it backfired on Adams. The dark square play was quite impressive for Kasparov, and that was a fantastic win with the black pieces. Actually, you know, Fritz is giving Bishop f6 as one of the top moves in this position, but I'm pretty sure this is not the exact position. Bishop f6 might indeed be a playable move, because one slight downside of going for this is that the dark squares have been made a little bit looser, and especially that f6 square for the bishop. So Bishop f6 is worthy of consideration, but Topalov, he goes with knight e5. If you haven't seen that game, it's on my channel, by the way. If you search for Adams against Kasparov, it's in a kind of English attack system. It's well worth checking out. So anyway, knight e5 is played, and that looks very logical indeed for this c4 square. It looks quite sensitive. If a knight's coming to c4, then it looks like big trouble there, yeah. But white, Sergei Karakin, he's not worried. He does just castle, allowing a knight to come to c4. So is there method in the madness? Bishop takes c4, knight takes c4, queen e2. And again here, it seems Bishop f6 might be a decent idea. It might not be too terrible an idea. Instead, we see rook c8. But this does suffer, this move, it seems. It seems there's a slight snag with rook c8, which is tapped into by white. Obviously, there are some possibilities for opening up the g file, you'd think. But there's another possibility here, h6. So we've got a huge amount of tension going on in the position over here. White's trying to open up the lines in principle. But, okay, what's going on here? Is it about e6 as well being undermined? Because that knight's eyeing e6. We do actually see f takes g6 here, which you might think strange. If h takes, big trouble. H takes. And this position is nasty. Knight takes, which protects the pawn and threatens a mate in one. So say black takes. We can do this. And now just taking is really dangerous. This seems as though the attack is crashing through. In fact, this sort of position, for example, is no good for black. It's going to get mated. The lines, when the lines open, then it can be a disaster. As an example, but okay, so that was an example of h takes g6 just then. And if g takes, even worse, probably g takes knight. It looks horrible. So yeah, e6 was given up in this position with this move. F takes g6, giving up e6. Just before we go there, though, it seems bishop f6 was prompted here as the engine choice, and if h6 there, f takes. Let's just follow this for a moment. Knight takes. Why this might not be so bad for black, this position. If the bishop is immediately here, queen e7, this position, bishop takes c3, threatening things like bishop takes b2. Apparently this position would have been okay. Apparently, just about, for black. So there's a slight move order concern, especially in these razor sharp positions, about, this could really change the whole outcome of the game, whether to play an immediate bishop f6 or rook c8. I guess that's one of the reasons they're referred to as razor sharp, these games, because you can trace back a particular inaccuracy and it might have an impact on the whole game result. But anyway, here it seems as though this is more dangerous as far as knight e6 is concerned. So h6, black tried this fg, knight e6, queen d7, white won the exchange, and the bishop is more passive here than if it's here, of course. It's obviously going to do more damage on f6. So we have, but Sergei puts it on the diagonal now. he does actually play h takes g6, putting the bishop on this diagonal. But he can parry it. Now, bishop d4, that's the idea, to parry it. And he's going to weaken, again, the black king position. Of course, he's the exchange up at the moment as well. a5 is played. Black usually does want to try and play for, stereotypically, for b4 anyway. Bishop takes g7. Queen takes g7. And now we have queen g4. And the threat, I mean, well, this check it can be really annoying. We have rook e8 stopping that check. If black went ahead, so this was played in the game. If black went ahead and played b4, let's have a look. Check. Now, if queen there, we can just take and then take here. That's not going to be good. If the king moves, we don't have to move this apparently. Maybe rook d3. This is clever stuff. Rook d3. Ah, yeah, we got this pin on c8. It's clever stuff. Apparently, this is good for white. Apparently, in fact, it can get even cleverer. Yeah, if it takes rook h3, winning the queen. Yeah, some weird stuff is going on behind the scenes. So anyway, it seems as though, in a nutshell here, b4 doesn't quite work for tactical reasons. If the knight did have to move, then it would be a disaster. So maybe it was kind of more transparent. Obviously, like this is mate, and knight a4 it doesn't look desirable. So maybe it was kind of transparent that something was up there, even if Topalov, yeah, he must have been searching what is up with b4. So he ends up playing rook e8. And now, actually, we get a gear shift, queen g5. It's just looking at b5 in this position. Not with the knight, because we've always got this queen b2 mate. Rule that out, but I mean really with the queen, actually. Queen takes b5 is actually a threat in this position. You think white is trying to blast open the king side, but he is the exchange up now. The threat really is queen takes b5 in this position. And that's parried with bishop c6. And now queen h6, just trying to get the queens off. And get the queen maybe a little bit more awkwardly placed. If she wants to retain on the diagonal for this b4, it goes back to queen goes back all the way there. So still with the potential idea of b4. But now we have b3. The mechanism used is b3 in this position. This looks like a very strong idea. Now, first of all, if the queen takes, I don't think there's time for that, takes and then check, and this is no good for black because, yeah, we're just exchange up again with everything taken off the board, so that's not possible. So we see actually knight takes a3, and now this nifty little move, rook h3, defending the knight. And now one threat as well is rook takes d6, bishop d7 hitting the rook g3. Yeah, black's position is looking a bit suspect. You might think, hasn't Topalov got time for something like b4? He plays queen f6. It's a bit miserable being the exchange down if you can't, especially if you can't see anything clear to compensate. He plays queen f6, but let's just check out quickly b4. It can be ignored again. This can be ignored with rook takes d6, it seems. There's a convergence on g6, which is probably fatal, because if it takes... actually, we don't even have to sack on g6, and this is closed anyway in this position. Just here is crushing, and then we are threatening rook g6. That's crushing. There's no attack for black. Rook takes g6 is on the cards there. The queen can't move because of queen h7. That would be dead for black. So okay, so basically in this position queen f6 is played, but now attention is shifted to this pawn with rook h1. I like this probing, this one and this one. So we have rook e7, keeping black busy. Queen h4. Do you want a queen exchange? Nope. Nope. Knight d5 hitting the rook. Rook moves, but this allows, yeah, the rook moves there. If it went to e8, then we've got knight f6 check, picking up another exchange, potentially, or even worse, if the king goes here, rook f3. So yeah, the rook went to f7, but now this allows queen d8 check. And things are falling apart here. The amusing thing about this position is, from White's perspective, that White doesn't even need to have a crushing attack here on the king side. He picks up the a pawn. Sergei Karakin picks up the a pawn. He's bouncing off these angles like a ping pong. Pardon me, not like that angle, but here, he'll be back straight on the dark squares, picking up the a pawn en route, hitting the knight. So black has got to worry about his knight now. Topalov tries knight takes c2. White doesn't even have to take this. I don't know, there might be a tiny bit of something if White took that knight. Let's have a quick look. White didn't. White played queen c3. If he took the knight, even this is okay for White apparently. Check. As long as, well, that might allow rook f1, but here apparently king d3 is okay. I think the checks might run out anyway here, or even this crazy move, because we've got queen d8 here, and that'll be winning for White. So yeah, that's desperate. Topalov's desperate here, but this is even more crushing than taking the knight. Queen c3. Because the immediate threats, can you see what the immediate threat for White is? What is White actually threatening in this position? White is threatening what after queen c3? Any ideas? Yeah? Okay, I hope you'll get 100 points for this. Rook takes g6, yeah, because, you know, if takes, then we've got this rook h8 checkmate, or queen h8 checkmate. So black would be forced to play rook g7, but black just resigned here. It's a bit of a diabolical position. The knight is also seemingly in trouble, but let's imagine if the knight moved back there. Rook takes g6 here, then we got knight f6 check. If here knight takes d7, it's just murderous. If here check, and we're taking the queen anyway. End of it. That's the end of it. It's just absolute murder, this position here. Yeah, after knight f6, just taking the bishop, murder. So that is not too pleasant. I mean, what else? If queen here, we can just take this, and then actually we can just scoop up this knight. No problem. We're rook up. So yeah, there's nothing after this for black. I hope you're convinced that there's nothing here. Black had a miserable game, a lot of it the exchange down, and in this position there seems to be no resources at all whatsoever for black, and he doesn't seem to be in any position to have any resources. I remember thinking I've had a flashback memory. Why should an attacking player have all these resources? Because he's got all these trump cards basically. He's got this huge knight on d5. The rooks are blasting. I remember getting hacked up once in a tournament game by Agilada, who absolutely destroyed my Sicilian dragon. And I was thinking, I'm working so hard here to find resources with black, but then I look at his position and he's got all the trump cards. So you've got to ask, why should there be? Why should there be any resources? Chess does not owe you resources. You need to have trump cards. Without trump cards, why should you expect there to be resources in the position? You can be a nerd, sure, you can spend hours thinking of a move, but if you're busted strategically, forget it. Yeah? This is it. Black's just been completely wiped out. There's no trump cards for black. Why should black have any counterplay? Black was the exchange down most of the game. What is interesting though about this is that, you know, when black relinquished the square d8, how this queen bounced like this, it's very impressive stuff, how the queen's been buzzing around the board here in this game. So Karakin's obviously a very dangerous player, able to use all the angles for his queen, and we saw that in his final round as well. Yeah, so very, very dangerous on the attack, but he's using, you know, the whole board for his attack. So what do you guys think about this game? Have you seen this game before? This was against Topalov in round 12. This was 4 days ago. What do you think about this game? Was it a good game? What did we learn from it in a nutshell? One thing is, this bishop f6 needs to be investigated. Donald Trump cards, yes, very good, very funny. That's very topical. Yes, you need your Donald Trump cards. No, so one thing is this bishop f6 timing that needs to be investigated, because this whole thing with g6 and h6 is just exceptionally dangerous from two perspectives. G6 is not just about line opening, it's about the e6 pawn, that dropping off, that losing the exchange. So the idea of bishop f6 to generate some counterplay needs to be investigated. But in the game later, yeah, black just seemed to lose the exchange without much of a fight. But on the other hand, also, if a player is depressed in a tournament, they're hardly going to be enthusiastic. Maybe he just wanted to see the end of the tournament and lost a lot of energy already prior to this. He'd already taken a few losses, so it wasn't Topalov's greatest tournament. So let's move on to another game. Now, Vishy Anand had a very interesting encounter with Sergei Karakin, and it's a bit long and drawn out, I warn you. So I'm hoping to show this game with some interest. Okay, so let's have a go at it. Anyway, it's a big one. This happened in round 11, so this was the 24th of March, a few days back. So Vishy Anand was white. Have you all seen this game? Anyone seen this game? Who has seen this game already, out of interest? Anand against Karakin. Anyone seen this game? This isn't going to be as interesting. No, sorry, I shouldn't say that. No, it's going to be really interesting in its own regard. It's interesting. It's got its own interest points. I'm not biased or anything to shorter games. Okay, so e4 from Vishy Anand, e5 from Sergei Karakin. We go into a Roy Lopez, and we get this Berlin defense variation. And d3, you know, castles and knight c3, quite theoretical. So we see d3, bishop c5, c3, castles. This has been trodden before quite a lot. There's hundreds of games with this path. We're still in like book here. d5. No. Knight takes e5. Knight takes e4. White seems to have some sort of tiny edge here from the opening. The e5 outpost looks attractive, but also this c5 outpost looks interesting for the knight to use under the right circumstance. And in fact, it's used here, knight c5. If black did take, I don't think that would be good. That's an important bishop in the position, not to give up the dark square bishop. This would be okay for white. There's weak dark squares here as well. This is okay for white. So no, maybe black was tempted for that, but no, knight g6. And now this is kind of pinned with queen h5. We're looking at h7 now, so it's pinned, can't move because of queen h7 mate, yeah? So this looks like a fun position now with queen h5 for the moment. And it's here actually black did play bishop takes c5 in this position. So knight e4, that was taken. And now with tempo rook d1, still held by the queen here, rook d1. And now simplification. And you might think, oh hang on, isn't this dull? Everything's coming off and we're left with an opposite colour bishop scenario. But the exciting thing here from white's perspective is that white has got good coordination on the d file, an entry point on d6. So just from a technique perspective, is this a game which white can convert here just with that d file, the extra speed to get to the d file? You might think, without any exploitable targets, is the d file worth that much in this position? And in fact, this bishop's not going to be on this diagonal anyway after this next move, f6. So would you say that white's got anything here after bishop e3? Do you think, like if I asked you, white has something or nothing, what would you say? Just say something or nothing. Is this point of fascination? Is this d file really potentially a winning trump card? Remember, we've got opposite colour bishops here. Should white technically be able to win this position? Now, to Solving's Denmark on stream, remember, our organisers of the World Championship this year do not like anyone streaming the event. Yeah, they're in the process of legal action, so I'm not streaming the event in November. Yeah, unless they say to the whole chess world, you're allowed to stream the World Championship. No one's going to do it. No one's going to risk it. Yeah, so that's out of the question. I'm not going to be streaming in November, I don't think, at this point, unless something radically changes. Anyway, back to the game here. Is white okay here or what? The d6 square seems nice. Is that nice enough to win the game, Travis? Is the d6 square nice enough to win? Really? Okay, let's have a look. It is actually occupied soon, very quickly now. After this g5, it's occupied. So we can double, right? So we can exert our pressure and authority on the d8 square. Rook e8. Yes, we've got our authority on the d file now, but what about targets? Do we need exploitable targets? Bishop e6 hitting a2, and black really is threatening bishop takes a2. That's parried. King comes up. Rook here, trying to provoke maybe a pawn to commit. No, we can't do that because of that. So bishop f5. a4. What's the idea? g4. b4. Hold on a sec. Something's brewing here for b5. In fact, c6 is the first target, surely. Because with b5, we're going to be asking a question about black's pawn structure here. Is this potentially a bit dodgy if we can put more pressure on c6 here with b5? Now, if black tried to parry with a6, he didn't do this. He played bishop g8. If black tries to parry with a6, it might be an interesting move anyway. He didn't do that. Or even apparently a5. a5 or a6 might be interesting, but In the game, bishop g8 was played. So b5 was allowed. And maybe Sergei thought, okay, I'm just going to hold c6 here with rook c8. Is that an exploitable target or not? Rook d7. Here. Then we have b6. a6. But with b6 we've got a little hook we didn't have before. We've got this c7 hook. Rook c7. Trying to generate a very aggressive looking passed pawn. King f8. Now c4. And here black's in a little bit of a bind, it seems. Black, you might think this is mysterious, on move 33 played this, which obviously it leaves this pawn unprotected. But what else is there for black to do? Let's just hold on a sec here. If black takes here, then this immediately threatens. One idea is bishop d2, funny enough, bishop a5 and then rook d8. That would be nasty to have a pawn constantly protected with this bishop there. If it can't protect it here, look for another way, and actually a5. So say here, then there's check winning immediately. This pawn can't be tolerated. And if here, which stops rook d8, it gives a chance for bishop d2. And if here we've got bishop a5 or rook takes e4 check. And this is nasty actually, this position for black. So it doesn't seem a great advert actually to consider instead of the move bishop e6, it doesn't seem a great advert that to take on c7. And if we play g6 instead, again this bishop d2 is actually an important resource. Maybe even bishop c3 as well on this diagonal, just hitting here. Yeah, so it does, that would create another target here for the dark square bishop. So I don't know, this looks mysterious, but I think maybe black thought he's had a fortress or something. Rook takes e4, he gave up that pawn. King f7. f4. Rook takes now. Rook c8. f5. Okay, so white has no chance to protect the pawn now. He hasn't got the time for that. But the bishop is eyeing g5, so h4 is played. And this gets quite worrying. If black played this, I think, then the f4 square is released, so we can play this with impunity, because if here, then we've got bishop f4. So black doesn't want to release f4 control. Plays g6. Also, there's no time to take here because we can just take here, and this would be very nice. This position, either taking here or even stronger here. So yeah, g6 is tried. Rook d4 played, takes hg. F takes, bishop takes, threatening now bishop f4, among other things, just to win the bishop. Bishop drops back. f6, though, another pass pawn has emerged. First it was here and now it's here. This dangerous pass pawn instead. You'll notice that this bishop seems a little bit nicer than this one. The rook a little bit nicer than that one. King f8. Bishop f4, hitting the rook and ready to support the passed pawn if needed. But it wasn't actually. g5 wasn't played here. You might think g5 is interesting. In fact, king g2 was played. If g5, it releases the light squares a bit. Bishop d7, and maybe it's not entirely lost for black. But instead, king g2. Now in this position, if here Well, there's options for white. It wasn't tried. But let's see. Sorry, it was tried. Bishop d7 was tried. So the threat. It looks as though that pawn could be hanging at some point. Bishop g5 indirectly defending it. Bishop e6. Check. Now rook b8. Okay, pressure's mounting over here now. Bishop takes c4. It was just a double pawn though. Takes. Check. And the king comes up. Check. Rook c8. So now might take this pawn, or first throw in a check, then take the pawn. It's protected. But the king comes into the dark squares menacingly. King e6, stopping king e5, but check. Rook here threatening immediately to win an entire rook. Check. Bit of repetition. Rook e3 now. a5. Okay, has white made any progress at all? We're still in an opposite colour bishop ending. White is a pawn up, of course. That pawn looks fairly advanced here. So the question is, if you're playing this, like, can you blockade this? Is it worth spending hours trying to blockade the position? The blockade is literally set up here with rook f7. I mean, white might actually be threatening some nasty stuff. In any case, anyway, the blockade set up. King f4. Now, if bishop h4, then there's king g5, and we're hitting g6. So actually, black's next move stops bishop h4. The bishop's stuck there for a moment, because we really want our king to be on g5, but it's stuck there after that move. So Karakin's trying to put up a persistent defense here. Rook e1. White's got all the time in the world though to torture from this position. He's a pawn up. Isn't black going to break? Somehow black's going to give way. Somehow. King c8. King g3. Rook f7. Check. Now rook a8. Is that a threat, or is it this one? Actually, it might be more this one. Rook takes a5. We see king c7 being played. In fact, the bishop's protecting the rook, so what about the check here? Now here, rook takes a5 wasn't played. This is at move 64 now. This wasn't played. The rook, there's a funny reason for this. No, it is quite funny. Now, that's it. Now, actually, why? It's a good question, actually. Why can't white play? Why can't white play rook takes a5 here if you're still awake? Sorry, this was a great technique game. Why can't white play rook takes a5? Do you see why? Anyone? Clue. I'll give you a clue. He didn't play rook takes a5. There was a reason. I think it's quite funny anyway. I don't know if you will. But there's a reason why rook takes a5. It doesn't work too well. Yeah. If rook takes a5, it's a greedy rook and it's got no squares to go to after king b7. It can't actually get out of here. And it doesn't matter about this bishop. That bishop's not going to help it get out. It'll be stuck there. Yeah, so, yeah. So instead we see king f4. Rook d7. Oh, now here, as I mentioned before, if we ever get this idea in, we can play king g5. And you might wonder in this position, previously rook h7 was played. It can't be played here because check wins the rook, right? So in fact, after king f4, white has made real progress because he's able to play bishop h4 now and king g5. Bishop h4 holds the pawn, so it's better than bishop h6, which drops the pawn. But if he's able to get his king to g5, the torture rack is going to be stretched a bit more to unbearable proportions, surely. So rook d7, bishop h4, stretching the torture rack now. The king is going to come to g5. Progress has been made here. King b7, rook e8, bishop f7. And with this move, black threatens a few things. Like this check might be useful. So we see rook e4 stopping at least rook d4 check. The king still wants to go to g5. Because remember, we can always even go around here, maybe. A bit dangerous, but no, we can keep the pressure up a bit more. Bishop d5, rook e3, bishop goes back. And now black is allowed this kind of resource. King g5 is played finally. It's too slow to try and win the a pawn here, one would suspect. King a6 was played. If rook d4, actually check just wins the bishop anyway. So the king gets out of the check possibility. But rook e7 now is played, and Karakin, his king's far away from this pawn, and it's losing here. It's losing. He resigned here at move 70. So this is a game Magnus Carlsen might be studying for the World Chess Championship. Why is it losing? Well, if we try and protect the rook, in fact, there's a great move here. This wasn't played out, but there's a great move here just to break all resistance. Well, actually, there's probably multiple winning moves, but no, there's one really crushing move in this position which will destroy all resistance. White's play. This was not played out. White's play here. The ending was so exciting. Yes, I'll need to lie down after this as well. Yeah. So white's play here. Come on. What does white do to finish this position? Rook takes f7. Yes. Because if here, then we've got this. We've got two connected pass pawns anyway. Without doing any calculation, it's good news generally if you've got two connected pass pawns. Yeah. And here they do just crash through, don't they? Bishop e7 assisting to win the rook, and then we've got this one. So that'll be the end of that. Alright, so yeah, that was all from that's what can happen with a default trump card. You know, you might be playing someone who's apparently just not giving you anything, but you know, if you can try and grind out a win, yeah, that's good. You can remember this game as a guide to that particular type of grind. So let's have a look at another game. So what did we get from this game in a nutshell? Even opposite coloured bishops, you know, you don't have to let your opponent off. You know, just continual torture on both sides of the board. Try and break the blockades. The fun of seeing a blockade is trying to remove it. That's what I was told by IMs once at Gibraltar. When I said I was annoyed the opponent set up some blockade, and they said, well, the fun, if you have that situation, the fun is trying to break down the blockades. You've got to get into the spirit of things. Yeah, the defensive task is to blockade. The attacker's task is to get rid of the blockades. So anyway, so let's have a look at another game. Now Nakamura Anand is on the channel. Caruana against Anand. Did I put that on the channel? I don't think I've covered that many games from this tournament on the channel. There might have been some. No, I definitely covered that one. No, that was a fun one. Yeah, check out Karakin Anand on the channel. That was an interesting one, which is actually on the YouTube channel, kingscrusher YouTube. Okay, Anand against Aronian. That looks like the sort of game I wouldn't have voluntarily covered because it's quite a big one again. Yeah. But I think it's a masterpiece in its own right. Yeah, I suspect. So I've been told. So I get the impression of from people's comments. So does anyone object to looking at Anand against Aronian next? Anand versus Aronian next. Or do you have any other game preference? I have checked this out briefly. Anand against Aronian. You want to see more Karakin? The Naka against Anand is on the channel. I can't really. There's no point covering it. Just look on YouTube.com kingscrusher. You'll find Nakamura against Anand. But I didn't cover this game. So Anand against Aronian. Yeah. Unless there's another Karakin game. Okay, I'll just do a quick check. Was there another Karakin? He did win 4 times. So let me just audit this. Karakin against Nakamura is on the YouTube channel, right? That's definitely on the YouTube channel, because Nakamura sacked a piece and it didn't turn out that great. Karakin against Anand is on the channel. I remember covering that. No, I think we covered that last week. In fact, we covered that last week. That was an early round win. Anand against Karakin, we've just covered. Aronian against, no, that was a 101 move draw. No thanks. Karakin against Topalov, we've just covered. Karakin against Caruana is on the channel. So by process of elimination, yeah, I think this might be a good candidate to check out from the candidates. So Anand's against Aronian. Yeah. Anand against Aronian. Okay. E4 from Vichy. So Aronian played E5. We're going to in fact, we go into this Gyoko piano. It's when black plays bishop C5. Gyoko piano. Gyoko piano, however that's pronounced. Alright, so castles D6, D3, C3. It's quite well trodden. Actually, the most popular move here is bishop B3. It seems over the history of time bishop B3, but A4 was played. Bishop A7, knight A3. So why is the knight going there, you might ask? Usually the knight can hop like this towards the center, or F5 squares. And also you'll note that this route here is taken up by the rook. The rook would have had to have moved. If we want to go that scenic route, we have to move the rook, which is hassle, isn't it? So knight A3 is without the hassle of moving the rook on F1. So knight E7, knight C2, knight G6, and in fact the knight doesn't go to E3 here. First, there's a concern about this bishop eyeing this diagonal. It's neutralized with bishop E3, with the knight ready to step in to recapture, to go to the sensitive squares. Black castles, bishop takes, and now the knight goes to E3. Knight G4, Queen D2. So Queen D2, and actually this reminds me of something which I might as well say. Maybe a lot of you are thinking, you know, knight takes G4, any chance to capture things? I'll capture. No, in chess you've got to very carefully consider maintaining the tension and often letting the opponent capture, because you get small advantages. So Queen D2 is like a tension maintaining move, whilst a move like knight takes G4 just gives black easy development, equalization potentially. So these are game, you know, transformers. Don't be too keen just to do, you know, the forcing or capture moves. You know, Queen D2 keeps the tension going. A5, D4, Rook A8, D takes E5, Knight 4 takes, Knight takes, Knight takes, Bishop B3. So, okay, white's got a seemingly pleasant position here. If ever black moves the c pawn, this pawn's going to be weak. Knight d7, bishop drops back. f3, b6. Yep. Knight c5, b4. Knight goes back. Bishop drops back here. Queen d4. Queen e7. Alright, so nothing exciting seems to be going on at the moment. Nevertheless, white is getting something now. White is getting a nice grip on the light squares here. A Vulcan grip on the queen side. Bishop b7, c4. And if ever black took now, then we can reinforce this c file and torture the backward pawn, c7. Black doesn't really want to take here strategically. Let's have a look. We just take here, we've got this. See that? We'll be torturing c7 to death. Yeah? So black has to be patient. Queen e5. We have the queens coming off. King coming towards the center for both sides. But actually, sorry, with this move now, this shows extra space for white and extra mobility because the rook can shift to this side of the board. So rook c3. And there's a classic Fischer game in Simple Chess by Steen, where Steen, one of the arguments Michael Steen makes, who was one of Britain's earliest grandmasters, is that when you've got extra space, actually, one thing you can do with extra space is have greater mobility on both sides of the board. So here, yeah, it seems as though, especially if you look at this rook, it looks a bit strange. Does this strike you as a little bit strange that there's a rook on a7 here, whilst white's rook's, well, this rook's stuck, it seems, for the moment, but this rook is the one which seems to be going places in this position, to at least probe black, tease black, to try and change his pawn structure, create weaknesses. So we see rook d7, rook h3, probing black, forces a pawn to move, it seems. If rook h8, yeah, that might be playable. Rook h8, it doesn't lose outright. Okay, so it's a different story. h6 was played. Rook g3, rook e7. Yeah, and you might think, okay, what's happening now here? Actually, with this move, rook g6. It's funny that this lateral pressure is actually, these are kind of targets, because e5 might be on the cards. Black's also in a kind of near zugzwang in this position as well. If king, if the rook moves, we lose the bishop. If the bishop moves, well, e5. If takes, if takes, we've got rook g7, or in fact bishop b7 check is winning the bishop. So that's too dangerous. And if the king tries to step out, he takes. It's all pretty crushing. Rook g8 is a mate in 2. So this is a serious threat, this e5 in this position. Actually, this is really a serious concern, believe it or not. In the game, the very committal looking bishop takes d5 is played, and you might wonder why, because that goes into what I mentioned before, the deadly backward c7 pawn. So why does black want to allow that scenario? Why does Aronian want to take on d5 here? But what else? Yeah, if the king moves, I think e5 again might be dangerous. Oh no, there might be something even better here. e5 doesn't work out so well in this position. Maybe black can take, and not here because rook takes g7, but f takes, and there's nothing concrete there. Not immediately, but it turns out in this position, if king 8 was played, actually, hold on a sec, f5, with the idea of bishop e6 is nasty. I don't know, this looks like a torture position again. But what would white be doing? Maybe something like this plan, yes. Because this rook's not doing anything, so maybe we just come to do this. And then that looks like death warmed up for black, this position. Because the rooks are really disconnected and white's rook's top gear. So, okay, so this caused concern. So maybe, you know, there are some other plans afoot here, not just the e5 concern, but f5, just locking down these pawns and eventually doing this to black. So there's two concerns, e5 or f5, to address at all times. So anyway, given this, bishop takes d5 was played. Maybe king c8 is worth considering, but again, f5. It's going to be a grind anyway. Might not be that easy to do this plan. Does look quite easy to do the plan, but anyway, black might have something there. Okay, let's not labour this too much. So bishop takes d5 was played in a nutshell. So c takes d5, rook a8, king f3, rook a e8. Alright, how to make progress here, because black seems to be tying down white to the e4 pawn. In fact, this looks like a nice Capablanca rook and pawn ending move. This next move does seem to make progress. Yeah, it looks like yeah, white's play here. I don't know if you've seen this game before. White's play here. Can white make any progress? Any ideas? Alright, I mean, it's quite dynamic what was played. It's quite dynamic. That's my clue to you. Otherwise, sometimes I'm asking on when a dynamic decision was played, which could involve a positional sacrifice of some sort. So when you use a positional sacrifice, you're gaining something. You're investing some material, and you're gaining piece quality. So this next move would seem to represent a positional sacrifice, and it's actually the move king g4. But of course, you know, black is tied to g7 here. Okay, that is taken, and we have rook takes, and now rook d2. And one problem for black with the king here, one suspects, is if takes here, then I think we have rook c2 immediately. And if c5, we can take en passant, and that's going to be it's going to be more pleasant for white than for black. There is a tactical move, but this is okay for white. Okay, so this is a concern. To use this rook on the 7th rank to try and torture c7. So king b8, rook c2, preparing, the idea was to prepare rook c8 here. So we're still on this pawn. And one thing which intrigued me actually about Vichy's play in this game is it's like he has to care about the a pawn, because if the a pawn drops, you know, then black's got a pass pawn. He cares about it with rook a2, because white has time to try and infiltrate with his king on this side of the board, because this king is less active So fundamentally, white has this kind of free hand with his king coming in now. Entry points there on f5 in particular. So if you can just stop losing a pawn and giving black a passed pawn, that would help though. Rook d4, but black is going for this one instead. King f5, it's given up, but we get f6. The king is even more aggressive here. And note we've got a 3-to-1 pawn majority now. And black's pawn majority is a bit slowed down here. These seem to be fixing, the two seem to be fixing the free here. If a move like c6, it might be too dangerous. Check was played. If we try and liberate our pawn majority for black here, with a move like c6, I'm not sure this works too well. White can take f5. This sort of position, it seems to be favouring white. Basically, because this pawn's very dangerous and these pawns are still going nowhere. So the c6 liberation is not working too well. Remember, white's got this dangerous passed pawn in this position already set. So black's pawns are not that free at the moment. We see the check being played instead, and we still have this scenario where black really wants to get his pawn majority working. Check, winning f4 for h6 potentially, but first g3 was played here. That's actually an important finesse. If king takes, we lose this one. So it's important to actually play g3 here instead of quickly taking that, because that will be punished. So the rook moves, and then we have got a scenario of two connected passed pawns ready to roll, whilst black still has to do this anti-bind move with c6 at some point. There is already a passed pawn here though, that's used here, d5. King h5, ready to herd g pawn. So we get this, d3. With the threat of rook c2, h4. Ignoring rook c2, it doesn't actually matter here if rook c2 is played. We go here and blockade in this position on d1, and then what does black do? We've got our passed pawns that would be winning for white easily. White would be too quick in this position. So anyway, so that's ignored rook c2. h4, we have rook d4. Now d2 might be a concern. That's stopped. Yeah. King c8, g5, king g6, ready to herd the other pawn and give that one up for that one actually, just to make progress here, because the king is a bit stuck there anyway. That is being ironed. The king's stuck here, so gives this one up for this one, still ending up with a passed g pawn. And then there's still this thing that this pawn's going to be quicker than these guys, because these need to be unblocked. Now again, curiously, in this position, you know, white's play here, what does white play here? White's got to be careful. If I asked you white to play here, it might seem odd as a way of winning the game, but odds is sometimes necessary to sometimes it's just the requirements. That okay, white's already got a trump card here, doesn't want to give black any trump card in return. It's not a blitz game, wants to keep things relatively under control. So white plays what here? Any ideas? You're all losing 100 points. Every one of you is losing 100 points here. I think you haven't seen this game. Maybe the YouTube channels were not crying out to do this game in a hurry, or maybe it was done and no one looked at it. This intrigued me a little when I was playing through this game. It's the engine's top choice as well. Mind you, King G7 might be good. It's the engine's choice as well. But actually what was played is very good as well. Rook A3. Yeah, just protecting the pawn, because actually you might think, is this really weird? Is the king really expected to do all the work itself with that pawn? Couldn't black like stop the king in this case if King G7 wasn't played? Isn't it really weird to protect the measly A pawn here? You know, what if King F8? That wasn't played in the game. Rook C4 was played in the game, trying to liberate these pawns with C6. But if let's just test this. If King F8, if here, then actually C5 is a quick way to try and break the pawns out. But they're stronger here to actually borrow the rook again with Rook F3 check. And if King G8, Rook C3, we're on C7, and this is much more favourable because if we lose the A pawn here, Rook takes C7 and we're threatening mate. This is more favourable for white because then we're going to hit this one. Alright, so King F8 in this position. I mean, yeah, there's a check here. Let's promote that variation. Rook F3 check. And if here, yeah, Rook C3. If the king goes back, then we don't play this move. We play King G7 in this position. Oh, Gould and Bennett. Is this a slightly nuanced position where King G7 is I'm talking about Rook A3 and the other one, but King G7 here is necessary. We give up this because we get G6, and then we've got the check. This is going to be mega dangerous for black. Kick the king away. Pawn's only 2 steps away. This position, we want to just play G7. It's getting a little bit tricky actually. But I think we can this is nearly drawing actually, this position. This is more than tricky. Oh god, I'm getting confused, pardon me. I'm wondering if this is actually winning. Does anyone have a reference on this game position? Was it actually winning for Vichy, or did he get a win where he should have had a draw? I'm wondering now. Should this game have been drawn? I could load up a table base to check. There's an online table base. I can set this position up. I can do that now if you want. I think I should. Yeah, if you search on Google for online table base, if you want to check certain endgame positions, I'm going to set this up. So there's a rook on A3. I'll just get the fan position and put it into this thing. Oh, how useful. No information available. I've used k4it.de there. There's no information available on this position apparently. Great. I don't know about building a bridge. If we just go back into that King F8 line, check. That looks convincing. Now what didn't look as convincing was this line. So do we play King G7 or do we play something else? If we play King G7, let that pawn go. Okay. Hold on a sec. Now, I mentioned rook e3 check before. Forget that. Maybe there's another move here. King h6. I don't know. I'll just check this position as well. Table base. No information available. It's so helpful, these table bases. King h6 as a try. Can we build a bridge here? Is this check? Is this winning? Apparently this does look very promising now. Check. Check. Rook h3. Threatening check and queening just in time before this one queens. Then we get this scenario, which is going to be good for white with precise play. Here. We can win that with the rook, I think, just about. Get the opposition. We can try and win this with the rook. I think that'll be winning. Alright, okay. It's a bit scary to check these positions out, really. Just to be authoritative or not, I just can't, especially if there's no table-based support. It's kind of scary sometimes. You'd think some general principles are really helping, but I'm not. I think it often the finesses of the position really dictates. But anyway, King f8 wasn't played. Maybe level made it easier for white here with this move rook c4 instead. This does apparently lead to a big evaluation shift, by the way, this move here. It seems King f8 might be stubborn, but rook c4 was played instead, with the idea, it seems, of playing for, for c6. Okay, but now we do get King g7 with a vengeance. King d7, dragging the pawn forward. c6. Now this is much more simple than the stuff I just quickly touched on. This position is more simple, I think. Yes, there's a very, very clear positive evaluation on this position. So white to play here, he just really wants to hurt his pawn and stop the black pawns getting too active too quickly. King f6 is played. C takes. G7, threatening to queen. Rook goes behind. A takes, stopping the black pawns getting active, depriving the king of c6. We have now rook g1, and here it would be a mistake to play something like this, because I believe that would be a mistake. Well, it wouldn't be as accurate as what was played, which was check, check, and now trying to build a bridge with rook e5, so rook g5 comes next to get that pawn queening. And now rook takes g7 was tried, and yeah, I think white is winning this position even with king takes g7. It's winning for white even with this. But even easier here is to kick the king back first with check, and it's here that Levon Aronian resigned. If the king, let's see, let's move the king here. We take this rook. These pawns are not going anywhere basically, and nor is the king in this position. That looks just miserable. That looks trivial, completely trivial. Yeah, It's been made to look trivial there. If that, yeah, the pawns are not going anywhere. It's all over. The king's just coming back as well. That's totally trivial compared to yeah, the other lines. Yeah, so these rook and pawn endings are very interesting. So white seemed to get some sort of mobility space advantage, and that seemed to persist in some way to the rook and pawn endings. The white king seems to be more aggressive most of the time. The trump cards for white, not just the aggressive king, but the passed pawn potential on the king side, kept on creating and losing passed pawns until there was the g-pawn passed pawn. Maybe there was a more stubborn defense available to Levon, but that's the way it is. Oh, blimey. Okay, so that was a tough game to go through, actually. Yeah, my personal preference is actually for little attacking miniatures, I must admit, a lot of the time. But I think, you know, these meat and potato grinds, you know, rook and pawn endings or other sort of endings, they're really important to go through as well, to get a balanced diet. I think I mentioned that before, balanced diet. So I hope you got something from these games. And yeah, comments or questions on YouTube. Any further comments or questions, stick them on YouTube and I'll try and answer them if I get time. So okay, so see you next week and have a good week. And remember to like the video if you appreciated this session. So likes appreciated. Okay, see you next week. Thanks very much.